Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. We're on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, and later we'll be on Apple Podcasts and talklawradio.com. The State Bar of Texas is the state agency that governs attorney law licenses, and the State Bar wants attorneys to discuss the law for the public, but because legal advice must be tailored to the specific circumstances of each case, and because laws are ever changing, material discussed in this program is meant for general informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with your individual professional advice. Marquardt Law Firm sponsors our show today, and attorneys at Marquardt Law Firm focus on business and estate law, including last wills, living trusts, and tax-protected inheritance plans, and new businesses and old businesses which might have issues with corporations, contracts, LLCs, family-limited partnerships, and we can represent those who are facing problems from lack of planning, like in courtroom litigation. Before we get started talking about the law, let's begin with prayer. Dear God, thank you for all the gifts and blessings that you give to us. Please forgive us for our sins, for doing the wrong thing, for not doing your will. Please help Texas Game Warden Kevin Frazier and me give good information about Texas hunting regulations today. Help us to use the gifts and talents you have provided for the good of your people, for our own good, and for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Now it's time to discover your legal issue blind spots by listening to me talk about the law on the radio. Today we're talking about hunting regulations with Texas Game Warden Kevin Frazier. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You've been on the show 2 other times before, but just for our new listeners, I wanted to talk a little bit about your experience. So, what type of education did you get in order to become a game warden?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Services and Psychology. A lot of us have different degrees, it varies, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
And you started in Zapata County?
I did, in Zapata in 2002. Yeah, I was there for 3 years. And then I was in Guadalupe County for 11 years. I've been in Frio County almost 3 years now.
Okay. And I forgot to ask you, before you did all that, when you were a young man, you were a Boy Scout.
Yes, I was. I was a Boy Scout. I ended up being an Eagle Scout. And that's helped me very much. That helped me prepare the Boy Scouts, and being an Eagle Scout really helped me prepare to not only do this job, but just prepared me for life in general.
And that's the top Boy Scout, is an Eagle Scout.
It's the highest
right?
rank you can get in Boy Scouts, correct.
And how many Boy Scouts? All of them, or half of them, or?
Several years ago, I think probably about the time I was doing it, they said that less than 1% of every Boy Scout ever made it to Eagle Scout. I'm sure those numbers have probably gotten a little bit better, I would hope.
Yeah, but it's not easy to do.
It's not.
You have to be focused on.
Yeah, and have a lot of people supporting you.
Okay, so Texas Game Warden, what job does that entail?
Well, we're peace officers, just like any Texas peace officer, like a DPS officer or a county sheriff. But we mainly enforce the Texas Parks and Wildlife Code, the hunting regulations, the Texas Water Safety Act. We kind of consider ourselves the law enforcement off the pavement. You really don't see us much. If you do see us, it's going to be on the water or in a hunting camp or something. And, we like to, sometimes a lot of us don't like to be seen, we just like to surprise people.
Well, most recent, I was going to ask you, what do game wardens do before the hunting season starts, but you were telling me about that high-speed chase.
Oh, well, lately, with things going on the border, we were having a lot of illegal, human smuggling activity that's coming across the border, and in Frio County, it's kind of the front door to all that I-35 corridor. So probably the last 6 or 8 months, I've been involved in more chases and pursuits with Border Patrol and DPS probably than I have in my whole 20-year career. So it's, it was in one yesterday, on the way home. So it's a very hard thing right now. It's it's tragic. A lot of it doesn't end well, and we have a lot of agencies trying to curb that, and we're one of those agencies that assist, when we can. So.
I pray for your safety out
Thank
there.
you. Yeah.
Okay, so you said that you focus on the hunting regulations. When you meet somebody because you're investigating something, is that how it usually happens? I mean, you can't be everywhere all the time. You don't just get to stop everybody you see because people are few and far between. But you probably get calls and reports, and you have to investigate. Sure.
No, every day's different. And that's what I love about my job is most days I don't know if I'm going to go left or go right out of the driveway. I can make that decision unless I have a call, but we go out and just look for people. Dove season coming up, we're going to be, out, it's not going to be hard to find hunters. You just follow the shots.
Mm-hmm.
But in between going out and looking for those hunters, we'll be getting calls as well about those hunters and other calls. And so that's what leads me to make contact with people other than just going out and finding them, is answering those calls for service.
Have you ever had to find a lost person?
Oh, yeah, several times. In my career, we've had a lot of people that get stranded on the lake or lost on the river. Several years ago, I was involved with a rescue out in Big Bend where a couple had walked off and went hiking and they got lost. And the husband made it out, and they very much decided that they were going to leave her because she couldn't walk anymore. But they were photographers, and they took pictures of everywhere they'd been the last few days. And so we looked at all those pictures and narrowed it down to 1 or 2 canyons and got lucky and found her.
Wow.
Probably within hours of her dying. So,
I'm glad you were there.
Yeah, it was very, very fulfilling. A lot of those things don't turn out very well, especially when you're out in the middle of nowhere. So to find somebody and help somebody is always very, fulfilling.
Mm-hmm. How about you're investigating, shots fired, and so you're trying to find out what's going on there. Have you ever found somebody with stolen property?
Yeah, stolen firearms, stolen trailers, 4-wheelers, boats. Yeah, those are all high commodity items that get stolen, and especially it seems like it's a lot higher right now for some reason. Burglaries and thefts, and people are breaking into ranches and breaking into property. Properties maybe where someone's not maybe a full-time, they don't live there full-time. Seen a lot of it on these hunting ranches, and getting their 4-wheelers stolen, their, chainsaws and, weed eaters, just anything that can go be pawned. We're seeing that, yeah.
Or sold on the new Facebook app where you sell stuff.
Facebook Marketplace.
Right.
You can find a lot of stuff on there, yeah.
Just make sure it's not stolen when you buy it.
Yeah.
You said that game wardens were like police officers. What's your jurisdiction?
Well, we have full authority in all 254 counties of the state, so I can enforce any law pretty much anywhere in the state of Texas at any time. And sometimes, like right now, we have this hurricane going on. So in Louisiana, we do a lot of rescues, statewide, but there are times where we go to other states and help out as well with those situations. Yeah.
When you go to a camp, or when you find a hunter on the road where he's not supposed to be, what's the standard that you have to go by, with how suspicious do you have to be, or what evidence do you have to have before you start searching a person or a vehicle?
Well, that's kind of a broad question. I mean, every situation is different, and it all starts off with just simple questions, and you can tell a lot of times if somebody's not where they're supposed to be by just asking them a few questions. But every situation's different. I mean, if it's
and then the answers they provide.
Where are they from? What kind of vehicle are they driving? Are they intoxicated? Are they under the influence of drugs? There's all kinds of variables.
That gives you more reasons to keep asking.
Sure. During COVID, I saw, when I'm patrolling at night for night hunters or poachers, road hunters, I encountered a lot of younger kids, maybe high school age kids, driving around with their, teenage girlfriend, drinking beer, smoking marijuana or whatever they do, just because there wasn't much to do, nothing was open, so they would go take the back roads and do those things. And so I encountered a lot of that, more than I have before in the last year and a half. Yeah.
Well, I hope those kids find something better to do.
Yeah, we usually have a little talk about that at the end. Yeah.
Good.
And they usually get a couple citations as well. So that goes beyond the scope of, like I said, of what we do. I can enforce, alcohol laws and the drug law. I can enforce all those laws. So, so I write a lot of other tickets other than, parks and wildlife.
Right. So if somebody's hunting on private land and the gate's locked, but you need to talk to somebody about some report that's been made, what do you do when the gate's locked? How do you proceed?
Most every gate I come to is unlocked. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, there's ways. I mean, I usually call, we try to get to know all the landowners or the ranch managers. And so, there's always a way to make contact, or, we don't, people say, oh, well, they just cut your locks and cut your chain. No, we don't really do that. I think in my whole career I've done that one time, and it's because there was a medical emergency and the ambulance couldn't get in the gate. Well, I figured, I told them, look, I cut the chain link, and it was either you're dying or I'll buy you a new chain.
Right.
I'd rather get you help. So.
Yeah, they probably would too. Okay, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back with more hunting regulations with Texas Game Warden Kevin Frazier. Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. here with Kevin Frazier, Texas game warden, talking about the hunting regulations, getting ready for dove season, more specifically, and then following the whitetail deer season. Those are my favorite. Mr. Frazier, what's the first thing a person must do before going hunting?
Best thing is to go buy a hunting license.
Yeah,
for sure.
Gotta have that, but you probably run into lots of people that don't have one.
I do. From time to time I do, and a lot of it is either just ignorance of the law, just maybe they're first-time hunters and they don't know. I've had a few occasions where I've had some young children, maybe 8 or 9, 10-year-old children, deer hunting, that shot their first big deer, but they didn't have a license, and mom or dad tagged the deer with their own license, which is against the law. You got to have a license. Any age you got to have a license to hunt. So I've seen that quite a bit. But I also have, the people that, their buddy takes them hunting or fishing, and their buddy's been hunting and fishing their whole life. And he said, oh, well, I didn't know I needed one. Well, your buddy did. Why did he tell you if you're a first-time
That's the first
hunter
thing.
or fisherman? I think he would have told you.
They should have been talking about that.
So then, then a lot of times they'll say, oh, well, I'll make my buddy pay for it. So I said, well, that's between you and him.
But the other thing you're supposed to have is proof of hunter's education.
Yes. If you were born after September 2nd, 1971, I believe you have to have hunter education. And
it's easier to get that now. I mean,
it is. You can do it online.
Right.
Yeah. It's a good course, too. Even if you're an experienced hunter, there's always something in there you can learn. I've seen a lot of hunting accidents happen that probably could have been avoided if somebody had had hunter education.
I've done it 3 times.
Oh, wow. You must really like it.
Once for myself, once for my son, once for my daughter. I just went with them, because this was before it was all online, so that they could, have me there.
Those classes are actually a lot better because they're hands-on. Some of them. Yeah. And you probably learned something every time.
I did, or at least a reminder.
Sure.
So if you know somebody that's going to be taking hunter's education online, just do it with them so that you can be reminded. Okay, so we got hunter's license. When do you have to wear the bright orange?
Usually, I think and there are some specific situations, but usually I think the public hunting lands will require you to wear the hunter's orange, but most private lands, especially out where I work, not many people do.
Yeah, I think I read in the outdoor annual that you're supposed to wear the blaze orange when you're picking up reptiles on the side of the road.
Yes, which, I don't see a lot of people doing that, but, you certainly won't see me picking up a reptile unless I get a call for it.
Yeah.
I see a lot of snakes on the road. I'll jump out and mess with them a little bit, but, if I'm bored.
But hunting on public roads is a big thing. You continue to see that?
I do. I mean, it's just, there's just a lot of animals on the road, especially these back roads, and there's different people that do it. The people that are just have always been an illegal hunter and poacher, and those are the people that I'm looking for. Those are the people I like to catch. But you also, from time to time, I've come across people that are actually hunting to get meat. To feed their family. And so, of course, it's still illegal. You can't do that. But there are different ways, that we deal with different situations. And I always tell people, if you're that need of something, let me know. I know lots of landowners and lots of people that will donate, hogs, deer, and I can get you in touch with those people. I'd rather us do it that way than me catch you on the side of the road at 2:00 in the morning trying to feed your family. Because number one, it's just not safe anyway. A lot of these rural roads are starting to break up. These big ranches are breaking up. They're building houses and communities. And when you shoot off of the county road, or
You don't know where
you
it's
don't know
gonna go.
where that bullet's going. And I've seen that quite a bit too on these smaller acreages. People either hunting or doing target shooting on 5 or 8 or 10 acres, and they're shooting a AR-15 or they're shooting a 270 on 10 acres. Well, that thing's going to go
Off
a mile.
the land.
Yeah. And I've seen a couple people shot on other properties from somebody else.
Oh.
And they didn't even know they were there. Yeah. I get that call a lot.
How about when you hear shots before the sunrise and after the sunset? Do you get those calls?
Yeah, I do, but usually I'm out there and I'm actually hearing them myself. But I do from time to time get those calls, and if it's before the legal shooting hours of dove season, which is 30 minutes before sunrise to sunset, that's definitely against the law. And those are things that we address.
Well, I noticed on the Outdoor Annual app, so this is an app put out by Texas Parks and Wildlife, right? And so there's an app you can get on your smartphone, and you can look for the dove hunting season and all the rules. I noticed that there's a link there to look up sunrise and sunset, because this is, when you look outside, when does 30 minutes start? Well, now hunters don't have an excuse
Yeah.
because you can look up the official time.
At sunrise and sunset is different, and sunrise and sunset time in Bexar County is going to be different than in Webb County.
Right.
So
Yeah.
maybe off by a minute or 2 minutes. It depends on where you're at, but it does matter. It does make a difference.
Mm-hmm. So that Outdoor Annual app is what you need to understand these rules and regulations, because today's broadcast isn't going to be exhaustive enough for you to rely on for all the information that you need. I recommend downloading that app, and you can even look at it if you don't have cell service.
Correct. And last year they did not make the Outdoor Annual in a hard copy, but they did this year. It is back. So
If you're older and you want to have a paper copy, you can probably find it.
Yes.
You might just have to ask for it.
Yes.
Whereas
exactly.
in the past, the retailers would just give you a copy with your license.
Mm-hmm.
So dove season is starting, but it's different in different parts of the state, right?
Yes. Yeah, we have a north zone, a central zone, and a south zone.
And so the south zone starts at the south side of Bexar County.
Yes, and we have a special white wing zone that starts, that first weekend as well. So we have, it is confusing because you have so many zones, and that's what's good about the app is it'll break it down for you and let you know. I mean, things change so much, and these regulations change so much. Sometimes it's hard for us to keep up with them.
Well, I didn't notice there were so many different kind of dove.
Yes.
But again, on this app, it actually has pictures of all the different type of dove.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and yeah, they have different pictures of the dove, and it has the north zone, the central zone, the south zone seasons all broke down. September 1st, the north zone and central zone opens. The south zone don't open till the 14th. And
Except for special white wing.
That's for special white wing, which is September 3rd and 5th, and then September 10th and 12th.
So,
and those are only half-day hunts, too.
Oh, that's right. It
Yeah.
starts at noon.
Yes, which we'll get a number of people hunting in the morning, because they didn't read their rules or they just try to get away with it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm hunting dove and I'm shooting up in the air and I'm trying to identify that wing with the white stripe on it, if I accidentally shoot a different kind of dove, well, I can't take that back. That bird's...
No, but it's really easy. You can tell, like the white-winged doves are much bigger doves,
Okay.
and they fly a lot slower. A lot of times people mistake them for pigeons sometimes.
Yeah.
Because they're just a bigger, fatter dove.
Okay.
The mourning doves are a little bit smaller, but still, if you look at them long enough, you'll be able to tell.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
Okay. Along with the hunting license, when you know that you're going to be hunting dove, you have to get some special things. The Migratory Game Bird Endorsement, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so you might have to ask for that.
Yes. Yeah, when you buy your license, there's so many different licenses. There's, 1 day, a 5 day, a year from purchase. There's so many different ones. But whatever you get, if you get the resident hunting license, just make sure, they should ask you where you're going to hunt, but it's your responsibility to tell them what you're hunting and what you need. So make sure, especially for the dove season, you get the Migratory Game Bird Endorsement.
Right.
And it'll say it on your license. It'll say Migratory Game Bird. If you don't have that, then then you don't have, you're not allowed to hunt.
Yeah,
Migratory
those
game
birds.
And some of the common things we see is, well, the guy at Walmart or the guy at Academy or the guy at the feed store didn't give me the right one. Well, you're the hunter, and it's your responsibility to make sure you have the right license. So always look at that and look at what you have and how much you paid for it before you leave.
Okay, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we'll continue talking about the hunting regulations with Texas Game Warden Kevin Frazier. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here with Texas Game Warden Kevin Frazier. We've been talking about the hunting regulations because hunting season is coming up, and more specifically, dove season for the North Zone and Central Zone begins September 1st. And what was it again for the South Zone? September 13th?
14th, I believe, yes.
Except for the special white wing season, which is unique to the South Zone. That'll begin on September 3rd through the 5th.
Yes.
But remember, it starts at noon on each of those days.
Yes, and then the following weekend, it's the 3rd and the 5th, and then the 10th and the 12th. 10th
Oh,
and the 12th.
okay.
Yeah.
So that's just a weekend thing.
Yes, yes.
All right. Okay, so if you've never heard of the Texas Migratory Game Bird Endorsement, that's what you need because dove is a migratory game bird. And when you get your license, they're supposed to ask you some questions. That's
Yes.
the Harvest Information Program, or HIP.
Yes. Yeah, it's just basically they try to take a number, just a rough number of how many different animals you've killed, specifically like migratory game birds and stuff, ducks, doves. So it's just a program that they keep numbers for. Somebody looks at them. They have to ask you that, and then it's a little certification they put on your license. So you have to have that.
That you answered those questions.
Yes.
So when you're hunting dove, what happens if the bird is flying the fence line and you shoot the bird and the bird lands on the other side of the fence? Is that bad? Is that legal?
Well, it depends. You got a couple issues there. Number one, you're shooting across a property line, so you can't really do that. You're not allowed. Your projectile is not allowed to cross the property line unless you have permission from the other landowner. Not a lot of landowners like people shooting across the property line. But now you have a wounded animal or a dead animal on another piece of property. So legally, you can't just go over there and get it. You need to have permission from the landowner. So that's something I try to tell people to work out before the season starts. Even have a piece of paper, signed piece of paper, or a telephone number, some kind of agreement that so if I do show up or somebody calls me, then we can work it out a lot quicker and easier.
Yeah, that's a good point. Something else about dove season is the regulation about baiting. What is that?
It's just baiting is just throwing out any kind of different, like corn or milo or anything that'll attract the birds to a certain area. That's not a normal agricultural process. You'll see a lot of birds in these fields that have been, worked. The corn has been harvested and big sunflower fields. Those are normal agricultural practices those farmers do this time of year. So that's not a problem. But a lot of times we'll go on a property or go somewhere and someone will have actually thrown out bird seed or corn to attract the birds, and that's illegal. You cannot do that.
Okay, you get in trouble for that. You get a citation.
Yeah, typically that, and you'll any birds that you've shot will be, you'll have them confiscated. Could even confiscate your firearm as well, so your shotgun.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't want to be baiting the dove. What are some other violations you've seen with dove hunting?
The biggest one I'm seeing now is the shooting across the property line. Trespass by projectile is what we call that. And I get a lot of calls on that and write a lot of tickets on it. I'll have, a 400-acre field with 100 people in it, but everybody's standing on the fence line shooting across the county road. And that's a violation. You cannot shoot. Number one, you can't shoot across a public highway. Number two, you're shooting across the property anyway, and those pellets go a long way. So just make sure that your aim of fire is, stays on that property unless you have permission from the other landowners to shoot across it.
What do you see about bag limits, the limit of the number of birds that a person can take?
Well, we do see a lot of over-the-limit citations and or violations, and I think the restitution for I think white-winged doves and mourning doves are about $100 a piece right now, maybe a little more, I'm not sure. So times that by the number of birds you're over, and then the fine on top of that from the judge, and be a pretty expensive day out in the field. So it's a lot easier, I tell people, to do the right thing than it is to do the wrong thing. So
yeah, stop shooting.
stop shooting. I mean, you always have tomorrow.
And then there's a regulation that says you can't have too many shells in your shotgun.
Yeah, when you're hunting migratory game birds, your shotgun is only supposed to hold 3 shells. So, of course, a lot of people shoot over and unders, and those are, only hold 2 anyway. But most guns, and this is a typical scenario where I'll check somebody and their gun holds 5 or 6 shells, and he'll say, "Oh, well, I just bought it brand new, or I bought it from my cousin or my uncle," and well, it's your responsibility to check, make sure that gun has a plug in it and it's only able to hold 3 shells while you're hunting those birds. So.
And you got to take it apart in order to put
Yes.
that in there.
And it's not real hard, but I'm not a licensed gunsmith, so I'm not gonna stand in the field and fix your gun for you. It's your responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's all I wanted to discuss about dove. Can we move on to whitetail deer?
Sure.
Okay. What are some common deer hunting violations?
Well, like I said earlier, I'm seeing a lot of people tagging deer under someone else's license, not having a license, hunting without it. Probably just like the dove season, a lot of people that fall under the hunter education requirement, they don't have that. And that's a very easy thing to attain. Like we said, you can do it online.
So start now.
Start now, get it knocked out, and then you only have to take it once. Those are some of the common violations I see, just the license violations, not tagging the deer, trying to save your tags. I went into a deer camp last year, and I'd gotten some information on it, and they told me this specific person had already shot about 7 or 8 deer. And so I went in the cooler, and there was, 15 or 20 deer hanging, and all of his tags were knocked out, and then there was, his daughter had tags. Well, he had taken his daughter's license and tagged,
deer that he shot
with her license. So I think we ended up writing him 7 or 8 tickets and taking all of the deer meat. And then about 2 weeks later, another warden here in Bexar County caught the guy doing the same thing in another hunting spot. So
wow.
I guess he didn't learn the first time.
No.
But he paid, I know he's going to have to pay several thousands of dollars in restitution and fines and stuff.
So when you confiscate the deer meat, where does it go?
I always donate it to someone, less fortunate that needs it. A lot of times there are some other programs too around the state, Hunters for the Hungry, and there's some other meat markets I can take them to, and they have people that'll come and pick them up. So yeah, most of the time, none of these animals that we take and get wasted. I always try to find a way.
You just have to make some phone calls.
Yeah, and I also have a lot of people in my phone that I know that always are looking for deer meat and hog meat, and because they feed their families, and they'll come out any time of day or night and come get it. So those are the people I like to help. So, somebody's mistake ends up helping out somebody else. Yeah.
Okay. So when you shoot a deer, you're supposed to tag it right then.
Yeah, the law says you're supposed to tag it immediately upon kill, and I understand a lot of people don't take a pen out to the deer blind, but usually, when you get back to camp and you've, done your high fives and taken your pictures, then it's a good time to get that taken care of before you gut it and skin it and get it in the cooler, put it on the pit, whatever you're going to do.
Right.
Let's get that thing properly tagged so you're legal.
But you have to keep the proof of sex. So
yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, I mean, just, of course, that comes into play a lot, whenever the deer leaves the property. A lot of times someone will shoot a buck, and have a nice set of antlers, and they'll have the meat. Maybe they have 2 or 3 buddies there, and they want to divide the meat up. So, a lot of times we want to make sure that the raw documentation is used. That we have
There's a form.
a form for that, or you can write it out too. Just so whenever someone leaves with the head and then someone else leaves with the meat, that all of that's documented. And that happens a lot, where I'll stop somebody coming out of a ranch and they'll have a couple, back straps or something, but they won't have any documentation on it. Well, my buddy gave me this. Well, who?
Yeah.
If you're doing it right, you'll have a wildlife resource document or something written down with the hunter's name and address and phone number and what it was and when he gave it to you. So I can call and verify that. So.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you said that, because somebody was asking me about that.
And a lot of times we see that a lot too in dove season, where people that travel for several days and hunt over the weekend out of town, they can't possess more than 45 birds when they come back. But on the first day they'll shoot 15, and then they'll bag them, but they won't. They need to date them. And so when I show up on the second or third day of hunting and you've got 35 birds, they need to be separated, and I know what day they were killed and who killed them. I'll show up and there'll be 6 hunters in a truck, and there'll be 150 birds in an ice chest, and that's Or you walk up to somebody in the field and 3 guys are standing around a truck and there's a pile of birds. You've got to keep everything separated at all times.
So use those Gladlock bags maybe to separate them.
See a lot of that, yes.
Okay, I'm glad you said that about the dove, because that's important for people to know. We have to take another break. We'll come back and talk more about whitetail deer. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt, talking about hunting regulations with Texas Game Warden Kevin Frazier. and we were talking about deer, and then we were talking about dove. Now we're talking about deer again. Mr. Frazier, what happens if somebody shoots what they think to be an antlerless deer, maybe a doe, and then they find out, by a closer look, that there's an antler there? Is the hunter in violation even though he thought it was a doe when he was looking at it through his scope?
Not necessarily, depending on what county he's in. There are certain counties where, you're not allowed to shoot does, or you have to have a permit.
Mm-hmm.
There are some counties, like Atascosa County, where you can't shoot a buck that's less than 13 inches of inside spread.
Right.
So yeah, you possibly could have a violation there, but the best thing to do is always just to call a game warden or call somebody, and it's always easier for me to work with somebody or deal with somebody on that was honest, that made an honest mistake, than me just showing up and seeing these violations. So.
And having somebody cover it up by
Sure.
using somebody else's license, which is another violation.
Exactly. Stuff starts to snowball sometimes.
Uh-huh.
It's something that I can try to talk to you about and work with you with starts to snowball when you start doing other things.
Mm-hmm.
Try to mess with it. Yeah, cover it up.
What happens if you find somebody hunting on land and you get the feeling like maybe he didn't have the landowner's consent? Where do you go from there?
I usually try to contact the landowner or the ranch manager, and again, it's one of those things. Every situation is different, but a lot of times you can tell if somebody's supposed to be there or not. But there are circumstances and situations where, yeah, we do get someone trespassing and hunting without consent, and those can be up to felony charges if the landowner wants to file charges. Yeah,
because
for sure.
it's trespassing.
Yes, with
Yeah.
the firearm, hunting a game animal without
Wow.
consent.
Wow.
Yes, that's a
No.
big deal.
Don't want to get a felony. Don't want to have a felony on your record, that's for sure.
No.
And if somebody's hunting out of season, what are some of the penalties that you've seen for that?
Well, there's different. We always say, if you're hunting out of deer season, it's not, if it's, July and you're hunting deer, it's not deer season. But what if it's November and you're hunting deer from a public road? Well, there's no open season on a public road, so that's closed season as well.
Oh.
So there are different circumstances on how that is, but they're anywhere from Class C to misdemeanors to Class B. Some of them will go up to Class A, depending on if you shot it off the road or shot it illegally on someone else's property. There's a lot of varying fines and penalties if you have prior convictions of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It escalates.
It does.
And restitution would be paying the value for the animal.
The value for the animal, the replacement value for the animal. Yeah, which is usually several $100s up to $1,000 or more in some cases.
If somebody finds a deer hung up on a barbed wire fence, apparently not able to free itself, what can be done?
Excuse me. Well, see that a lot. A lot of deer get hung up in fences. A lot of animals. See a lot of owls, a lot of hawks. Deer especially, we try to get out there and try to do something, try to get it out. If it's a rancher or a farmer, someone who's been around animals a lot of times I'll have them try to help it or get it out. But most times, if I don't know the person, I'll try to get out there and do something with it, or try to get somebody out there that knows what they're doing so they don't get hurt, because you can actually get hurt pretty bad messing with a wild animal, especially when it's in stress. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And what type of gun and ammo is allowed for hunting deer?
Well, you can use any kind of ammo other than a rimfire shot, like a .22 kind of ammo. You can't hunt deer with that. But I see people who use some really, really big stuff. all the way up, from 220, smaller, small as 223 up to, I don't know, you name it. I mean, shooting stuff you'd take to shoot, African animals with. But, people like guns, no, mainly what you need to know, there's, like 22 or any rimfire.
Does it have to be a rifle?
Does not have to be a rifle. People hunt deer with bows. Yeah.
How about a pistol? There
are people that hunt deer with pistols. Yeah, sure. It's a little more sporty.
Yeah, right.
You gotta get pretty close.
How about if a deer is hit by a car? Can people ask me all the time, can I jump out and euthanize the deer to prevent suffering? Is that allowed?
We really want people to call us and let us know where it's at, what's going on. There's a safety value in that. With somebody just getting out and shooting a gun on the side of the road. Recently we've allowed people to put deer down, if they talk to a game warden, but you just don't know someone's level of experience or what they're thinking about, or there's factors you need to consider, like where's the deer at? Is there a house? Is there a school? There are several factors involved there. So we want to make sure that whatever we do, we're doing it safely.
Yeah, if it's inside the city, that could be dangerous.
It could be, yeah. Or someone shoots and misses and it skips off the road and hits a house or a car. Yeah, those are definitely things that we need to consider.
Best to call law enforcement. Okay. The hog hunting is legal, right? You're supposed to have a hunting license if you're hunting, period.
Yeah, but now you do not need a hunting license to hunt hogs.
And so if you're hunting deer during the day and you want to hunt hogs at night, using lights and stuff that's allowed,
you can do that.
How do you stop yourself from getting in trouble for hunting deer at night with lights? How can somebody convince the game warden that he's not doing the wrong thing?
Well, a lot of times people will call, make a courtesy call to the game warden, let them know you'll be out hunting hogs at night, and I get a lot of those calls, and I appreciate that, because then maybe the next door neighbor or rancher will see a spotlight and call me, and if I know that the neighbor had already called me earlier that day, then it saves me from getting up in the middle of the night to go check it out.
Yeah.
I already knew it, so it's definitely a big help.
Okay.
For that communication to happen.
Okay, so you can hunt hogs at night. That's allowed. Any calls that you've had about hunting hogs that you've had to issue citations on?
Oh, well, hunting, on private property, not having permission to hunt on that land, people hunting hogs. We had a lot of problems with these guys that run dogs, that run the hogs with the dogs, and we had a lot of problems with that sometimes, with them running. Maybe they're supposed to be where they are, but maybe they cross a fence line chasing an animal. That happen. That's kind of common in some places. But I try to have a good relationship with those guys and the landowners and try to get everybody on the same page, so that doesn't become a big deal. But there could be some trespassing problems there. You still have to have hunter education, if you fall in that requirement. So you may not need the license to hunt the hog, but you still have to have the hunter education for that requirement.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned dogs, and you're not allowed to hunt deer with the aid of a dog, right?
No, but recently that we are allowing them to track the animals now, and we've done that. But there is some new stuff now that has come out for allowing them to track, and so.
Okay.
And all of that information too, I believe, is updated in the Outdoor Annual.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that we got that cleared up. That's what I was going to ask. What about a tracking dog? Okay, you said that there were some new regulations regarding fish. We're not going to go into that today, but if somebody is a big fisher, they should read the outdoor
Yeah,
manual.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's ever changing down on the coast right now, especially with that freeze last year. They had a lot of problems with the fish kill. So sometimes, we'll just get a random email and they've changed, the limit on like a trout or or on a red snapper. Those things are ever changing. So they do, a lot of times they pass emergency rules. So it's best to stay, stay online, stay on the app and look for those different changes.
Good. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Last year, we talked about fishing, and we didn't quite get to water safety. So I wanted you to say something about that. When a game warden approaches you on the water, what are some things that you know that they're going to ask?
Well, definitely, you got to have enough life jackets for everybody in the boat. You got to have, fire extinguisher, a Type 4 throwable device or a throw cushion or a ring buoy, is the old school ring buoys. The biggest thing we see is kids under 13 not wearing their life jackets. That's number one thing that we enforce, and that's a big deal. You can operate a boat and consume alcohol. You just can't be intoxicated. So that is a little bit different from driving a motor vehicle, but
Right.
But it doesn't take much out on the water on a hot day to get intoxicated above the legal limit.
So bring a friend.
Yeah, it's very good to have somebody that's
not
knowledgeable,
drinking.
that's not drinking. Yeah, so don't get you in a bind. A lot of people drink a lot on the water and go swimming, and that's where a lot of our drownings occur, is people cramping up or not being very good swimmers anyway, and going into the water without a life jacket. We see that a lot. And of course, with the alcohol comes boat accidents, and so we investigate all those and work all of those as well. So, yeah, we've got a lot going on the lake, a lot of dangers out there. So.
Okay, well, that's all we have for this time. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for all your information.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
That's it for Talk Law Radio. We'll see you next time.